Colleagues, we will commence with the report on agenda item 15. And I present this report to the plenary for approval. Are there any comments or interventions? There being none, this report is therefore approved. Thank you. As we move on, we have the report on agenda item 16, and I present this report to the plenary for approval. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. Firstly, I need to congratulate that you successfully concluded the executive committee moments ago. And finally, we came to the Assembly to examine or consider the reports and draft resolutions submitted by executive committee. Before we starting the subjective matters, I would like to raise attention to the plenary that we find a very interesting situation during the executive committee. Many countries, or be called majority countries, refused to open and discuss and make any change to the draft resolutions annexed to this report. I calculated all these countries who are against to change. I find most of them are OECD countries. These OECD countries refuse to open the discussion, the draft resolution. I don't know whether this no discussion, no any change policy is a custom of the ICAO. But to the newcomer of this organization, I'm really doubt that whether my plane to Canada have traveled me back to the colonial area. I'm still in the 21st century again, or we are framed by those countries. We are invited by this organization as the contracting states come to here to consider any items set up before us. However, we are told you can deliver your concerns, we can make it a record, but sorry, you cannot change anything. I don't believe this is a correct way for our assembly or for this organization to conduct its meeting like this. Mr. President, I would congratulate you that this reckless manner of conducting meeting is not a custom ICAO. In my knowledge and consultation with many other colleagues here, and I do realize that at the beginning of this organization take up climate change issues discussions, this situation had never happened before. But if this Assembly 40, adopt the draft resolution like this, it will set up a very dangerous precedent for the organization to adopt any resolution without consideration of the contracted states. In order to make clear what their rationing behind those countries refusing, I listened very clearly to their intervention. Mainly, there are two reasons for refusing. First, they are not ready to discuss it. However, we are also believe that there's difficulties for many countries to finish their consideration of the draft resolution. And we can accommodate their difficulties, and we can ask this resolution to be considered at next assembly and waiting for their detailed study. Another reason I heard from the floor is that this draft resolution has been adopted by Council, and we need not change anything to that. If this is a custom of the organization, but I cannot find any rules, procedures from this organization, whether or not anything the Council made decision, we cannot change at assembly. So that's why I believe it's a dangerous precedent to be set up. If our contracting member cannot make any change or the suggestions to the decision by Council, and I believe in the future, this organization will have no need to have assembly meetings because the Council will make notification to the contracted group, contracted country, to their capital that Council has made such decision, and we have informed you to take action accordingly. That's all. It's quite easy and feasible to all other countries. We needed to travel a long distance to this organization to spend so much money of taxpayer to stay in this expensive city. So I don't believe there's a real and proper way for us to conduct a meeting like that. That's why our delegation tried very hard last week to insist our right to consider and to modify the draft resolution attached to this report. Having said that, Mr. President, we are eager to open the discussion of the draft resolution and make deep communication with other colleagues to see whether or not we could find consensus among any modifications suggested by our delegation and many other delegations. Thank you.
Thank you. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I must say that we have great sympathy for what China just said. Of course, we don't have time to discuss any other variants of the resolution now. But what he said is absolutely right. This is the, it is imperative that delegates can come here and discuss. I know that the Council worked on this, and I respect very much the decisions made by the Council, but ICAO Assembly is the sovereign body, and so I agree with what the delegate from China said. We must take this into consideration during our next meetings and even at high-level meetings at the next assembly. I understand one of the states in the executive committee proposed to review the question of having an extraordinary assembly. Perhaps this is a good proposal, but I don't want to discuss this right now, but I think we should think about it, and maybe the Council could think about it. That is just one of the thoughts that I had. Secondly, I would like to ask for your advice, Mr. President. And you know that we expressed our objections to the text of the resolution, and we made statements about this. And I was talking about two resolutions, and so should I do it? I have two. So one is about this, and one is on agenda item 17. So I'd like to know when to make these statements.
Thank you. We will need to first adopt the resolution, and then reservations will be noted thereafter. United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, I should just say that Three Little Birds is one of my favorite songs, so thank you very much for that. The United States fully supports the resolution proposed under Agenda Item 16, but we also felt compelled to take the floor now just to offer maybe some different perspectives than the Chinese delegation on the process to date. Of course, all countries are here and are open and willing to discuss views. Assembly only comes about once every 3 years, and it is a view of the United States to work with all and any country that wants to work and improve and update and address their concerns in the resolution and in how this process proceeds. And we've worked constructively with China and many other countries. In fact, we've made ourselves available informally and formally, and I've seen many other countries do the very same thing. And in these discussions, in fact, there were just a few states that seem to have taken the floor most of the time. So there's been a lot of flexibility accorded here. Perhaps the most difficult and challenging thing here is that, number one, as we discussed the other day, we are in the process of implementing CORSIA. And there are a number of important steps that are going on at the technical level that will inform the development in CORSIA. And of course, that is where further discussions can be had, and also ultimately in the review of CORSIA. But perhaps most surprising is that after the Council, it's not that the Council decisions should be accepted automatically, but there's a process for countries to review the Council proposal to Assembly, to prepare working papers, and to, with plenty of advance notice, give other countries an understanding of what their proposed changes are to the text and how they would like to see the resolution changed. In this case, changes came on Sunday of this week, not last week. Countries around the table, many countries, have to go back to their capitals. They have to exchange with experts. It's very difficult to see how even reasonable changes could be accepted in such a short period of time. So with due respect to all colleagues in the room, frankly, there has been openness and willingness and a desire and frankly a lot of flexibility over the last 48 hours to accommodate different views. So we very much have a different view than was previously expressed and recommend that the Agenda Item 16 resolution be adopted by this Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to take the floor to offer my delegation's support for the proposed resolution, and I would just like to make a few comments in response to what's been said this morning. And this has been a lengthy negotiating process over many years, at least 9 years, and the resolutions as they stand, as I said earlier, are the product of a very delicate balance. This delicate balance accommodated the concerns of the states on climate change and response to climate change and CORSIA, the ICAO offsetting mechanism. And ICAO has provided global leadership on these matters. It's not because Council is proposing this that we have to accept it. I think it's because this resolution is very delicately balanced, these two resolutions, and they were adopted by the past Assembly. And so they are approved texts with the majority support, and Council proposed certain amendments to reflect updated work. And there's nothing really new in the resolutions, as Many have said before it's important to take account of the concerns, legitimate concerns of a number of countries, and we have done so with the greatest respect. Nevertheless, we believe that this will allow us to move forward and make progress on this issue, which is very important to all of us. We are answerable to our people and the international community. Furthermore, Mexico, of course, doesn't want unfair charges and predatory practices just because of climate change actions. But on the other hand, we have a responsibility to provide some kind of a solution for the long term. And this is part of the basket of measures that this Assembly has considered. And this is our way of responding to the issue. So really, as we've said, and as the United States delegate said, we, of course, are open to these additional concerns, but I think we have to take on board constructive proposals and achieve the broadest possible consensus on this. I think ICAO has, together with its member states, developed these resolutions, and in response to the legitimate concerns of many developing states, has provided capacity building facilities to help implement CORSIA, to ensure that CORSIA can be implemented by states as economically as possible and on the basis of firm understanding. And that's the gist of these resolutions and this scheme. So I'd just like to state clearly that of course, we are open to dialogue, and we want to make constructive contributions to pursue our aim and address climate change. But I don't think we should change the resolutions, and if we don't, it's because of the reasons that I put forward earlier. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Eritrea.
Morning, Mr. President, and good morning to all of you. I thank Mr. President for giving the floor to Eritrea. Eritrea firmly believes that the essence behind the draft resolution is indeed paradoxical, in the sense that on the one hand, we try to advance mitigation, in particular CORSIA's mission for the salvation of the majority. But this is targeted on the few, leaving behind the majority at stake and marginalized. In light of that, Eritrea firmly believes that the viewpoint expressed by the PRC and the Russian Federation do squarely accommodate the concerns of developing countries. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like leave the procedure issues on the later on. First, I will respond to some comments from the floor. First, I heard a information from the U.S. that they have not ready to respond to our proposals. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Our proposal has been constant and be delivered many, many times, even before the 2010. And we also have expressed our views on this 2008 Council meeting. And we also expressed it very clearly on the Council meeting this year. In order to make better understanding our position, we submitted our detailed modification to draft resolution and request committee to post it on website. However, we also noticed that there are still some OECD countries cannot be ready for response to our position. And we could ask this assembly to delay the discussion of this resolution till they are ready for it. And some delegates said this draft resolution is balanced, delicately balanced one, but our opinion have been repeatedly, nearly 8 years, but not adequately incorporated in this draft resolution. In that way, we don't believe, at least to us, it's a balanced way. It needs more further consideration, modification, and need further deliberation with all other delegates. In order to better use this Assembly 40, our delegation would like to introduce our amendment to this draft resolution. At the chapeau of the draft resolution of the paper of the item 16, we would like to add a new paragraph reads as follows. Also recognizing that some states have concerns on the fairness and the feasibility of the goal with the net carbon emissions from 2020 at the same level and have field reservations on the goal. And we have many other modifications on the chapeau, but all the delegates could read it from the website. To save time, I will read all the modifications on the chapeau, but I would rather begin with the executive paragraph. We would like to add new paragraph on the executive paragraph as 1bis. 1bis reads as follows: reaffirms the principle of the sovereignty of rights in the international cooperation to address climate change. And we propose to have a change to paragraph 2A as follows: continue to enhance synergies between ICAO and other relevant UN agencies on environmental issues relating to international civil aviation, including GHG emissions. Paragraph 7, we supposed to have changed to second sentences, deleting the collective aspirational goal, replaced by the sustainable growth of international aviation. Paragraph 8, we have our proposal for whole paragraph, we would read as follows. Recognize that some states have concerns on the goal outlined in paragraph 6 above, and request the Council to report to the 41st session of the 41st session the fairness and the feasibility of the goal in light of collective efforts to develop green aviation and relevant data-driven research initiated by the states, and as appropriate by the CAPE. Studies regarding the feasibility of achieving the goal and the relevant information from states. The first two sentences of paragraph 9 should read as follows. Request the Council to take stock of the states' long-term green growth visions listed in their respective national plans and continue to explore the fairness and the feasibilities of a long-term goal. Next is paragraph 13. The whole paragraph would read like the following. Request the Council to continue to provide guidance and other technical assistance for the preparation and update of states' action plans prior to the end of June 2021, in order for states to conduct the necessary studies and to voluntarily submit action plans to the ICAO, and to encourage states' dissemination of economic and technical studies and best practices related to the aspirational goals. And the paragraph 15, the first sentence should read as follows. Request the Council, respectful of sovereignty of states, to invite states to continue to. Next, of paragraph 22, we change the request to invites. Paragraph 22C, we delete through ICAO. Paragraph 23C, delete the sentence in the second line from covering such object to the third line, sustainability reporting. And the last line of this paragraph, we delete airports, replaced by states. Paragraph 23D, delete the first line guidance material, replaced by reports. Paragraph 25C, at the last sentences, we replace global aspirational goal with sustainable growth of international civil aviation. Paragraph 25F, deleting the last sentences, beginning from leading up to the convening of the SAFE 3. Paragraph 26, we replace request council to with encourage states to. And we suggested to delete the develop guidance in the third paragraph and replace with collaborate to adapt to. And about annex to this draft resolution, we propose to move to the CORSIA resolution. That's our proposal for the modification to the operative paragraph to this draft resolution. We are quite open and ready to discuss with all interested parties. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, the UK fully supports the resolution proposed under Agenda Item 16 and strongly urges against any changes. The UK also fully supports the interventions made by the United States and Mexico. We have listened extremely patiently and courteously to the interventions from those states with varying views. It cannot be denied that we have had a frank and open dialogue over the past week with views of all states noted. It is now time for the plenary to accept the resolution as drafted and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to echo what my colleague from the United Kingdom just said. I think it's really time to move forward. We listened to the changes now the second time from China. We had them already in executive committee. And I think we accommodated their concerns in the report. And we were really keen to get an agreement on the report just this morning. And we discussed that in a small group. So I think it's really to move forward, time to move forward with the resolution now. Thank you.
Thank you. Algeria.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are all aware of the importance of the CORSIA project, and we also think that the remarks and the proposals by China and supported by other states are very relevant and should be taken into consideration. Even possible, perhaps, to discuss them. Thank you.
Thank you. France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Over these last few days, we have worked in a spirit of very great cooperation, listening, and positive spirit. And we have been working to try to achieve consensus, and we have tried to take into consideration all of the positions to agree on the report on item 16. And we have done work this morning in a small group to be as inclusive as possible and as respectful as possible. Everyone here in this hall will acknowledge that. I would like to know that the delegations are listening to the other delegations and to the voice of the majority. We are trying to achieve consensus. Yesterday, Mr. President, you proposed a method to move forward on these 2 points, 16 and 17, and to work on the report to be inclusive and then to adopt the resolution as is. So it is surprising to us that your wisdom and advice has not borne as much fruit as we would have hoped this morning. So we think that the moment has come, the time has come to take the decision and to continue with your method and to adopt the resolution without changes. Thank you.
Thank you. India.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ICAO is a multilateral body, and the views that are expressed by different countries are based on the challenges they face and the unique circumstances of their people. India would therefore like to state here in this plenary session of the Assembly that the views that have been expressed by India throughout the meetings of the Executive Committee are concerns which are of great significance to us and to our future development. We would therefore feel that the observations that we have made on the draft resolution may be discussed. We may have an opportunity to discuss them, and the views that have been expressed by a few other countries that have serious concerns may be given an opportunity to be in some way accommodated in the final resolution. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Finland.
Finland would like to concur with the views presented by UK, Germany, and France. We are discussed about these issues 2 weeks now, and now it is time to go forward, make a decision, and go forward.
Thank you. Colleagues, again, in the interest of time, I'm asking for any views that are not in line with the proposal I made yesterday. We are here to review and accept the report on agenda item 16, and one of the parts of the discussion yesterday was there would be no change to the resolution, and that was the basis on which we moved forward. So I therefore ask, we have already heard a few states that are not in line with that view, and are there any other states that are not in line with that view? I will ask those states to take the floor. United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Actually, I'm not with those who's against the proposal. I'm echoing my colleague from US, UK, Germany, France, Finland, and others who's supporting the text, and as we agree in the executive committee that all the views being presented and reflected in the report, and it was a very, very tiring process to listen and going in circles. So today, I think we came here to proceed and accept the resolution to be adopted as it is, without opening any paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any opposing views? Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I understand that we will probably adopt the resolution now, but I just wanted to be recorded that we, the Russian delegation, object to the adoption of this resolution, and we will make a reservation when we have the floor. It should be understood that this will not be a unanimously adopted resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, given the discussion that we have had, noting all the both convergent and divergent views, this report on agenda item 16 is adopted. Thank you. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, moments ago, reserved our right to come back to procedural issues. You don't allow me to intervention on the subject, so refrain me from raised flags again. However, I cannot agree with your decision to adopt this resolution, because I need first to seek clarification from legal officer what's the decision-making process of assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have summarized the other day that it is our main principle try to work on consensus. In general, the chair would summarize the discussions and propose a conclusion. In the case that there is no consensus and there's obvious objections, of course, there is also the way under the rules of procedures to resolve that. And everybody is very familiar with that. Thank you.
Saudi Arabia.
شكرا سعادة الرئيس. في البداية أود أن أشكر لكم.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank you for the leadership you have demonstrated to manage the work of this assembly which you have guided so well. I would also like to thank Dr. Aliu, the President of the Council, and the Secretary General for all of the efforts made. Mr. President, I would like to make a statement on behalf of the government of Saudi Arabia. I would like to refer to the resolution of the General Assembly regarding climate change. The government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to express and record its reservations regarding paragraph 6 of this resolution. Is a paragraph related to the ICAO goals regarding zero increase of carbon emissions for 2020, known as ZNG for 2020. Mr. President, ICAO adopted this assembly during its 37th session of the Assembly without reviewing the studies of the effects of this resolution. And therefore, a number of states will lodge reservations. At the 38th Assembly, as part of Resolution 18, paragraph 9, they called to reconsider this aspirational goal. It called for the review of the feasibility of this aspirational goal, taking into consideration the reservations submitted by states and the studies. But the Kingdom regrets that there was no study. Furthermore, the study was not brought to this General Assembly. So the Kingdom would like us to make use of this study. And we are told that the assessment of the guidance, known as trend assessment, is the study that we mentioned, but this is not correct. This distorts reality a bit. The trend assessment is in no way a feasibility study. Therefore, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia confirms that this aspirational goal has not been established on the basis of practical studies and studies. It also does not take into consideration the feasibility and the implementability of such a goal in practical terms. this goal did not take into consideration the ability of the developing countries to grow and to reduce as much as possible emissions, as well as to achieve as much maturity as possible in the markets. Mr. President, we hope that you will record our reservation regarding paragraph 6, regarding carbon neutral growth by 2020, taking into consideration the measures applicable in such a case. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. China.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation from our legal officers. And because your summarization of the decision has been denied by the plenary, I request this assembly make decision strictly in accordance with rules procedures. Thank you.
President of the Council.
And thank you, colleagues. This is a contentious issue, no doubt, like many issues that we are confronted with, because as has been said, this is a multinational organization, multicultural organization. And we have the rules of procedure to address things, situations. Having said that, the practice in ICAO has been that we try to work on the basis of consensus. Maybe not unanimity. That is not unanimous consensus, but consensus. The effort is always to try to find the greater consensus as much as possible. This is the spirit of compromise in which we have worked. The responsibility of the President of the Assembly is an onerous one, a delicate one, but a very important one, to be able to gauge the response from states and to make a summary that we all always strive to support the President of the Assembly in his work. It is clear that as far as this report is concerned, and in particular the resolution, has been said, which is a continuation of a resolution A39-2. I have before me here the summary listing of reservations to resolution A39-2. The changes to the resolution has been to take account of the additional work that was done by our organization in the past 3 years. While the expectation would be that over the past 3 years, there would have been convergence of opinion, and to have a resolution without reservation, clearly, perhaps this time, this is not the case for all the states that made reservation at that time. Now, the right to make and privilege to make a reservation is for every state. As a matter of fact, for the standards and recommended practices of ICAO, you can file a difference under the convention. Having said that, we should recognize the practice of the organization. As a representative from the council, I had to make similar statement in 2013 when the assembly degenerated into people calling for voting on the basis of the environment. Then, even then in that capacity, not being president of the council then, the assembly listened. And that process was stopped. And we worked on the basis of consensus. What I'm appealing to you at this time is that please honor us, honor the organization with similar approach. It is clear there is overwhelming majority, with the exception of few states, that are in support of this resolution. We have worked assiduously for the past 2 weeks to reach the point where we are now. I repeat, it's the right of any state to file a reservation or make a reservation. I don't think at this stage we should go down the road of voting. I don't think anybody can dispute the feeling in this assembly hall as to where the majority lies. It's not even close. That is my appeal to all delegations. Of course, states are sovereign. They can do as they wish. But Mr. President of the Assembly, this is my appeal to this august body. Thank you.
Thank you, President of the Council, and again for your astute comments and wisdom on this matter. Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to recall that all of us here have the same mandate from our governments. That is to take strategic decisions for the next 3 years for international civil aviation. We all have the mandate to be efficient, and it wouldn't be sincere to hide behind a will to continue the discussion on a discussion that already took place before. And so I believe that we need to approve this decision immediately. And to paraphrase my colleague from the Delegation of China, I would like the aircraft that takes me home today be a clean one that arrives in the 21st century and that doesn't arrive in a past which is much more polluted. Thank you.
Thank you. Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the time has come to, Chair, you called for any states who had a problem with the report for 16. Just about everyone has agreed with that. The Russian Federation, as they're entitled to, and correctly said that they would put forward a reservation. The same option is open to our colleagues from China, and I think that needs to be made clear. They are entitled to put forward a reservation against the report for agenda item 16. But I think we have now reached the point that we do not need any further state comments. We simply need to put that to the floor and let our colleagues from China say yes, they wish to lodge a reservation. But for everybody else, I think we've now, I'm hoping, approved agenda item 16. And Chair, I'm looking forward to hearing some more Bob Marley. Thank you.
Thank you. United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We support the way forward, and just note that the United States renews and would like recorded its standing reservation on guiding principle P as in Papa. Thank you.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Firstly, I need to express our respect of the appeal of Council President, and we don't want to be so bluntly to go into some situation where many countries don't want to go, but because this assembly create a dangerous precedent for discussion inside our assembly, so our delegation have no other choices to make another precedent in decision making under the climate change issues. Let me respond quickly to some interventions from the floor. During the discussion of executive committee meetings, our delegation go along with the consensus on the draft report on the resolution because most OECD countries there refuse to touch the draft resolution. In order to quickly finish the consideration inside the executive committee, we have common understanding that we do not discuss draft resolution in the committee. Rather, we submitted it to the assembly for further consideration, including our suggestion for modification. Because we believe assembly plenary is a superior organizations for all other committees. That's our understanding for the process of negotiation inside the executive committee. Lastly, another reason why we insisted to conduct our meeting in according with rules procedure is because we have calculated carefully from yesterday who support, who against our modification request. Most of countries from OECDs, and we find and much more countries keep silent. All these countries from developing countries. We cannot necessarily believe that those silent countries will agree or against it. So we need to conduct our meeting accordingly in according with rules procedure to show the real meaning of the whole organization contract party rather than speaker countries. Thank you.
Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have to admit that it is very difficult for me to divide the world into OECD and the others and group countries together. I don't understand what the other countries would be, so I don't really understand this dialect about separating and dividing. This assembly is called on to reach consensus agreements, not division. There shouldn't be divisions, but we're supposed to be creating the future of aviation in the next years. And we know that environment is a capital issue. Aviation cannot, the developed world needs aviation and growth requires us to address the issue of the environment, and that's clear. So I would invite delegations not to create divisions here in the Assembly. There are three mechanisms that any country can avail itself of. Of course, we have listened sensitively and respectfully to the different concerns of the various countries, and I'm sure that in the next 3 years, the expert groups and the organization will be very attuned to those sensitivities, but we need to get a move on, and now is the time to do so. Countries will have the opportunity to lodge reservations and submit differences to the standards, and countries will be able to give their positions at the various meetings in the next 3 years and in the next assembly. So, Mr. President, in this organization, which is celebrating 75 years, it works very well, all the procedures, both in the Council and the Assembly, and the history of this organization is significant, and we need to replicate the success of the last 75 years. So please, let's move on and move forward and not create rifts and differences among countries. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. The Delegation of China, I ask again if your consideration could be to make formal reservations to the resolution, as has been done by other states which are noted, and I'm seeking your support in that consideration to move this matter forward. China.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to the efforts from the floor to try to accommodate our concerns. So in my understanding, the new suggestion for our delegation is to incorporate all our modifications in the draft resolution. In that basis, I can agree upon this process. Thank you.
No, that was not the statement. The statement is to adopt the resolution and that you can make formal reservations to the resolution, as has been done by other states. Mexico.
Very briefly, Mr. President. I understood that you put a question a while ago asking those countries that are opposed to this resolution could request the floor. And so far, delegations who have done so are those that have an issue with the resolution, and the others have not taken the floor. So that suggests to me that there is broad consensus and will to move forward on this in this assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I cannot accept this process, and we need to have a very clear decision-making process, and our reservation should be based on the final decision of this assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I invite your attention to Rule 46 of our standing rules of procedures of the Assembly. And I read, voting shall normally be by voice, by show of hands, or by standing. I suggest that we could raise our nameplates. Cuba.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We would like clarification on exactly what we're going to be voting on. What is the question that we need to respond to? It seems to me that aside from approving the resolution as it stands in 16, what the distinguished delegate of China asked is for discussion. So we need to be clear exactly what we would be voting on. Thank you.
The matter that we are deciding is for the adoption of the resolution as is, and that states who have a divergent view can file a formal reservation. China.
Thank you, Mr. President. This delegation requests the secret vote. Thank you.
Colleagues, there is a request from the delegation of China. Is there support for a secret ballot? India?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. India would like to support the proposal of China. Thank you.
Russian Federation?
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand that this is a very complicated task, and we have great respect for the proposal of our Chinese colleague and the support from India. Thank you.
DPRC?
Thank you, Chairman. We also support proposal made by China, Russian Federation, and then the other countries. Thank you.
Cuba?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We also support the proposal by China, seconded by 3 other countries. Thank you.
Eritrea?
Thank you, Mr. President. The viewpoint expressed is brilliant, and it could let us move forward, so we support. I do have some, of course, time should come in order for us to be able to see on Rule 46. Nevertheless, for the time being, I should agree with the viewpoint expressed by the PRC, the Russian Federation, and the rest of the honorable speakers with regard to this issue. Thank you.
Saudi Arabia?
شكرا سيد الرئيس لدينا
Mr. President, we have a query about the rules of procedure. So have we adopted this resolution? The legal bureau can we vote on this even though the resolution has been adopted? Thank you.
Please give the floor to the Legal Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I mentioned previously, when the chair, or in this case, president, summarize the deliberation, if there is no opposition, that summary would stand as a conclusion of the body. However, if there are obvious objections, then there is the possibility for a state to ask for the vote. This is, I know nobody wants the vote, me neither. How much work do we have to do for organize a voting? But this is the rule. Unless you change the rule, we have to stand by this. Thank you.
Australia?
Chair, I thought ICAO was all about transparency. I thought that's what our colleague from China said at the start of this discussion, but suddenly we're into secret ballots. Chair, can we seriously not do this without a secret ballot?
Jamaica?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were seeking clarification as to the voting procedure because that's not what our understanding was from when we heard the President of Council read the procedures. So if he could repeat that, but we are inclined to support Australia not to have a secret ballot. Thank you.
There is Rule 47. The vote on any question shall be by secret ballot if the delegations of 2 or more concurrent states so request, and the request is not opposed. In case of opposition, the question whether there shall be a secret ballot shall be decided by a majority of votes cast in secret ballot. The provisions of this rule shall prevail over those of Rule 46, which was the first rule that was cited. Colleagues, this is exactly the reason why we don't do this. This is exactly the reason why we normally do not go along this path. Right now, there is already opposition to the question whether there shall be a secret ballot. But I appeal again to all of you, including the Chinese delegation, that please, let's simplify things in the manner and practice that has been applied in this organization decision-making. And in this regard, I'll read the preamble of the convention. Whereas the future development of international civil aviation can greatly help to create and preserve friendship and understanding among the nations and peoples of the world. Yet, its abuse can become a threat to the general security. And whereas it is desirable to avoid friction and to promote that cooperation between nations and peoples upon which the peace of the world depends. Therefore, the undersigned governments, having agreed on certain principles and arrangements in order that international civil aviation may be developed in a safe and orderly manner, and that international air transport services may be established on the basis of equality of opportunity and operated soundly and economically. We have worked over the past 2 weeks in order to meet this ethos. Don't let us go along this path. That is my appeal to all of you. We've made several decisions up to this time. Let's keep the practice of the organization for the benefit of the cooperation and the collaboration upon which our international air transport system depends. Thank you, Mr. President of the Assembly.
Thank you, President of the Council, again for those words, which I sincerely appeal to the members to take into consideration in how we move forward on this matter. France.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation would like to very strongly support what President Aliou just said. Those are very wise words. This year, we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of our organization. I think it's extremely important to send the world a message of unity and a message of proactive action. And I think we should follow Dr. Aliou's recommendation, and I hope each delegation will keep these wise words in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation would like to support the intervention and the wise counsel by the President of Dr. Aliou and supported by France. Thank you.
Thank you. Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think once again, President Aliou sounded wisdom. I fully support his proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. President. New Zealand supports the wise words of the President of the Council and the sentiments echoed by France, Nigeria and others. Thank you.
Thank you. Spain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We too support the proposal by the Council President. There are alternative mechanisms for countries in any event, and we are of the same view as other speakers supporting the President of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mexico.
I join previous speakers, and thank you, Mr. President, for your wise words, and I support your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also support your proposal, and I think that's very wise. And in fact, we want to take note that, we are not deciding on long-term goal or anything. We are saying that just let the Council look at the work. So it's going to be ongoing work, and all those concerns that have been expressed will indeed be taken into account when these matters surface in Council. So this is not the final word in itself, but that's ongoing work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Republic of Moldova.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Republic of Moldova heartily supports the way forward proposed by the President of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Norway.
Thank you, Chairman. We just would also like to thank the President of the Council for his wise words that we very much appreciate, and we also support the comments from, among others, France, Nigeria, Mexico, Singapore. So we warmly welcome the advice, and we hope that it will be followed. Thank you.
Thank you. Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Egypt supports the wise contribution by the President of the Council. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. We support the proposal by the President of the Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In common with earlier speakers, the UK also strongly supports the way forward suggested by the President of the Council and thanks him for his suggestion.
Thank you. Italy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Italian delegation wishes to thank very much the President of the Council, having recalled the principles guiding this organization in the Chicago Convention, and wishes to support his proposal. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Lebanon.
Mr. President, we support the wise intervention of the President of the Council and to the intervention of the France state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Germany.
Thank you, Mr. President. Germany also supports the proposal made by the President of the Council, and I think that's a really wise words. Thank you.
Thank you. Tunisia.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Tunisian delegation supports the proposal made by the President of the Council. Of course, we must reach an agreement that will take on board all of the comments and positions. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll take one last intervention, Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and delegates. The Caribbean islands are particularly affected by hurricanes and storms and weather and the environmental issues, and we support the intervention of the President. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I believe that all the interventions since Dr. Aliu's intervention has been indicating support. And I then again put the proposal for consideration by the delegations that the Assembly, the resolution be adopted and that states can file formal reservations to the Assembly resolution. China.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for the final result from the Council President. Our delegation can go along with adoption of this resolution on only basis of the incorporation of our suggestions inside. Otherwise, we have no other way to go. And we all respect for the principles and the preambles in the convention, and we all respect the rules and procedures. Thank you.
Colleagues, so it appears that we are going to a vote. Please be aware that if we are to do a secret ballot, we will have to do a vote on whether to do a secret ballot or not. And depending on the outcome of that, we will then vote on the substantive issue. So I therefore ask again that we vote in accordance. Well, do you agree with voting with secret ballot? Australia.
Okay, Chair. Now I know the secret rules. I have a very important suggestion to make. If this is the position of China on 16, I have a strong suspicion it's going to be the position on China on 17. Let us vote right now on both. And I'm happy if we're going to have a secret ballot, let's just have one secret ballot. And President, can I ask you to put forward a resolution that clearly says exactly what we are voting on? And my suggestion is that we are voting on 16 and 17 being agreed by this Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And certainly for absolute clarity, this is the matter that we will proceed to vote on. I thank you for that recommendation. Do you agree with the reports and attached resolutions under agenda items 16 and 17? That is what we will be voting on.
And with the understanding that reservation will be.
And of course, there is the understanding that formal reservations will be noted. So, colleagues, I think, again, in the interest of time, we proceed directly to the secret ballot. And again, the matter that we are voting on, do you agree with the draft reports and attached resolutions under agenda items 16 and 17? With the proviso that formal reservations will be noted. Are we all clear on the matter that we will be voting on? France.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the issue has developed a lot, since you asked a few questions on the procedure and there were clarifications made, it would be good for you to ask again a last time if the delegations have an objection to proceeding to vote using our signs, which remains the fastest way to conclude this discussion. We have been here in session for 15 days continuously. The interpreters and the conference services have done an enormous amount of work. There are many people here who have flights this evening, and in respect for them, I think we should ask this question, and to do so, to go as fast as possible to a vote that you mentioned in the beginning. I think that would be the most efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Argentina.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My delegation didn't want to take the floor, but we think that a great deal of work has been done to ensure that the reports reflect the various views. Moreover, in one of the reports, a lot of work was done to avoid suggesting that the report amends the resolution, and I would like to suggest that the resolutions be put to the vote and not the reports. Only the resolutions should be put to the vote and not the reports. Otherwise, that could set off a chain reaction much more complex than what we're dealing with now. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention, Argentina. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that Australia's proposal is very reasonable. And now we could vote on two issues at the same time. And as Argentina said, we could have a vote on the resolutions in order to save time. It's a bit of a deviation from the procedure, but unfortunately, we will not be voting. I would like to ask all of the delegations to agree to your proposal so that we can finish the process as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. And yes, I believe that would be certainly expedient that we vote on agenda item 16 and 17. And as the recommendation was made, the resolutions right. So the final, the resolutions on agenda items 16. So it is, 16 and 17, do you agree with the draft resolutions on the items 16 and 17? Again, in the interest of time, we are urging states that we will not use the method of secret balloting, but the show of your state's nameplate. Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I support voting both 16 and 17 resolutions, and by showing the plates. But I couldn't help myself to say this. I feel myself in a game of hide and seek. You know, so many countries just made it very clear that we should proceed quickly, and then we should just vote for open vote, was it? But we are just being tackled by very few countries. I think this is not the spirit of consensus in ICAO. This is not the spirit of assemblies. I think it should, all the things will go in its natural way eventually, and we will all see. It is not the end of anything. I mean, this is a living process. In the years coming ahead, all the countries will cooperate itself and we will find the right way. I think we should proceed in this understanding, in the understanding of cooperation and collaboration for the future, for the benefits of the ICAO and for the benefits of the environment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. President. New Zealand supports your proposal to vote on the resolutions for items 16 and 17 by show of name, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colombia supports the proposals by Australia, Argentina, and yours, Mr. President, and to proceed to the vote. Thank you.
China.
Thank you, Mr. President. This delegation also agreed to vote the two resolutions together. And as a last result, I also appeal all other delegates to show their flexibility to incorporate our suggestions into the resolution. In that way, we needn't vote in these important issues. However, we also respect for the rules procedures. We have been cited by Council President. So I don't know understanding what's your legal basis of your new suggestions. The reason for us to insist for secret ballot is because obviously no reason that many developing countries are afraid of expressing their viewpoints openly. So we needed to introduce and organize a better environment for them to express their opinion freely. Thank you.
I find it very interesting that China is not speaking for itself. It's speaking on behalf of some developing countries. I've listened carefully. As President of the Council, I felt the pulse of this organization. Are there any developing countries that is afraid to express its views? I don't know how the division of developed, who is a developed and developing country these days, but if you consider yourself a developing country and you are afraid to express your views, can you please indicate that somehow to me? Because that statement, to some extent, can be taken as not appropriate by some developing countries, because I believe they also are sovereign countries that can make decisions on their own. China should provide its reasons for itself. And those who wanted to take the floor, they've taken the floor. We understand that. I don't want us to degenerate into this situation whereby some states will be made to feel either inferior or superior. Please, all states of ICAO are equal, are of equal standing.
Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to talk not to you, but to your colleagues in the Assembly. I would like to say that we have put our president into a difficult situation, and this is only a procedural issue. But unfortunately, the secret ballot proposal was supported. And so if we are not going to have the secret ballot, we are going to go against the standing rules of the Assembly. The Assembly has the right to do this, but of course it is an even longer process. So there's just one possibility. We could either ask those who have supported the motion to withdraw them, or we should move on to the secret ballot. This is purely procedural issue. Thank you.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to the comments by distinguished Council President. I fully believe that each country has one stance. This is a very important principle for Chinese diplomatic policy. One country, even bigger or small, have equal vote. That's why we suggest to have equal opportunities to every countries here, rather to give opportunity to speakers. The second point is about, I can agree no more about your comment that China speak fully on behalf of benefits of developing country. I can assure you on that. I thank you, Mr. President, to give me this chance to explain why China speak on behalf of the developing country. Because the CORSIA itself is a market be established at the sacrifice of the future benefits of developing countries. Why I say that? Because at the moment, the CORSIA has a minimum immunity for many developing countries. However, in the future, are we going to keep all these developing countries always in the minimum status? Are we going to imagine that their civil aviation will develop in the future and much bigger than now? That's why we don't believe the CORSIA is a fair and balanced system for whole developing world. That's why we try our best to create for future space of development, sustainable development for developing countries in their civil aviation. That's why we need a very strong, to create the opportunities for all countries to get to learn what's really meaning to them, to developing country, by accepting these CORSIA places. That's why we consistently insist that we are needed to try our attention to the real reduction of GHGs from civil aviation, rather than by carbon, by offsetting from nowhere. That's why we need to stress that the sustainable development increase for the future of civil aviation in developing countries is more important than by carbon net. So I thank you, Council President, giving me this chance to explain openly to all the member states here why China will insist now looks like minority, but I believe in the future more and more developing countries could understanding what China is doing now, and they will join our group, and our group will be bigger and bigger, standing together to try to struggle for their future development of civil aviation. I thank you, Mr. President and the Council President.
Colleagues, we will therefore proceed with the vote, secret ballot. And the matter we're voting on, do you agree with the draft resolutions under items 16 and 17? Cuba.
Gracias, señor. Thank you, Mr. President. We had asked for the floor before you announced the start of the vote because we wanted to say that although Cuba was in favor of a secret ballot, Cuba is not afraid of giving its view out loud if necessary. On this sticking point, item 16, we have to recognize and state, as we have before, that in the comments submitted in the flimsy by China, India, and Russia, we see merit, and they raise some relevant issues. And there's merit in this because these views, the paragraphs and lines being introduced also introduce content and relate to the Chicago Preamble. And it has merit because it defends the position of developing countries. We see a clear dividing line between developed and developing countries, and it's clear where Cuba stands. We have a very special situation. But nevertheless, we have always tried to contribute to this sort of discussion. So what we mean to say is that although we see merit in some of the issues being raised to improve the resolutions adopted by the Council, because it wasn't possible to reopen this discussion, we maintained our position. And if necessary, the way this is being presented with possibility for reservations, we will put down a reservation, but we want to make our position clear because the time has come and there's been a turn in the discussions and we don't think this is appropriate for developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Costa Rica.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a country that promotes peace and nature, I would just like to send out this message.
3 little birds singing sweet songs, but instead 193 states voting or coming together. Thank you.
Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's unfortunate we'll have to go down this road. The Council President referred to Rule 47, and I suggest you go through it before we go ahead to vote for the two resolutions. I refer you to Rule 47 of the Rules of Procedure of the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. India.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank the President of the Council and the President of the Assembly for trying to find out a way forward. We really appreciate your efforts. My only comment is regarding the comment made by one country regarding our responsibilities towards environment protection and climate change. India, like many other countries, is a responsible nation and is committed to working with ICAO on policies and practices for climate protection as well as climate change. However, there are certain serious issues. We have certain serious concerns with certain goals like the carbon neutral growth 2020 or the aspiration goal or the goals that we are seeking for sustainable aviation fuel. We feel as developing countries that we are being put into a situation that when, as a student, as a child, he gets ready to go to school and he finds that the school has already maybe closed its doors or increased the fees. We don't want that to happen. Before our airlines are able to reach a certain level of international aviation, we find that they will have to pay a lot of additional fees, additional charges for going on various international routes. I think the principle of fairness is something we need to appreciate and acknowledge in such esteemed organizations like the ICAO Assembly. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you. We will proceed. Mr. Larkos. Thank you. We will adjourn for 10 minutes to get the necessary requirements in place. Thank you. Colleagues, welcome back. We are about to resume. Thank you, colleagues. We will resume our meeting. And where we left off, to proceed to the ballot on the matter of, do you agree with the draft resolutions under agenda items 16 and 17? And reservations, formal reservations, can be noted from states who make same. I will now hand over to Mr. Larkos, who will explain our process.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will now proceed to outline for the Assembly the procedures we will follow for this paper ballot. Firstly, paper ballots will be distributed only to those delegations with the right to vote and in accordance with the rules of procedure of the Assembly. Likewise, there will only be one ballot paper distributed per delegation with the right to vote. When voting for your choice, there will be three options on the ballot paper: yes, no, and abstain. When voting for the option of your choice, you are to mark the letter X opposite which option you choose. For those delegates wishing to submit a blank ballot, you do not need to mark any of the boxes on the ballot paper, and you can just simply leave the ballot paper as blank. You will, however, still be required to place your ballot paper into the ballot box. If at any time during the voting process, a delegate would require a fresh ballot paper, for instance, in cases where a ballot paper has been mistakenly marked, you can request a fresh ballot paper from one of the election monitors in exchange for the spoilt ballot paper. After it has been ascertained that everyone has completed their votes, the Assembly will then proceed to have a roll call for the deposit of the ballot papers. At this point, the names of member states will be read in English alphabetical order. When the name of your country is called, one delegate and one delegate only from that member state is to come forward with the ballot paper and wait at the bottom of the stairs on your left. Once the election monitor gives you the signal, you will then be required to come up the stairs, inform the election monitors at the top of the stairs of the name of your country so that it can be recorded that your member state has participated in this vote. Immediately thereafter, you should then move to deposit your ballot paper into the ballot box, which will be located on the table to my right. After you have cast your vote, we ask you to please use the stairs on your right to return to your seats. When every delegation has voted, I will invite the second Vice President, that is the delegate from South Africa, the fourth Vice President, that is the delegate from the Republic of Korea, and the chairperson of the Credentials Committee, that is the delegate from the Islamic Republic of Iran, to join the Secretariat for the official counting and verification of the votes and to ensure transparency in the process of the counting of votes. Please note that I will repeat all these instructions once again after all delegations have submitted their ballot papers. If all is in readiness, I would now like to ask the election monitors to take up their positions so as to commence the distribution of ballot papers. Election monitors, please take up your positions.
Please give the floor to the Legal Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like just to draw your attention to our rule number 3 of the Standing Rules of Procedure. It says that no person shall represent more than one state. Thank you.
I thank the Director of the Legal Bureau. I see that the election monitors are in their places. Thank you. In that case, I ask you to commence the distribution of ballot papers. Thank you. Please note that one member from each delegation will need to sign as having received a ballot paper. This is similar to the process that was followed for the election of member states to the Council on the previous Saturday and the past Tuesday. Once your member state has received the paper ballot, you may proceed to mark your vote on the ballot and fold the ballot paper once only. I repeat this instruction. Once you receive the ballot paper, please proceed to mark your vote and then fold the ballot paper once only. Delegates are reminded that should you make a mistake and you require a fresh ballot paper, please indicate to one of the election monitors who will supply you with a fresh ballot paper in exchange for the spoilt ballot paper. Once again, I wish to repeat that once your delegation has received a paper ballot, you may proceed to mark your vote on the ballot paper and then fold the ballot paper once only.
Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, we're voting to decide if we want to have a secret ballot or not. That's my question. Are we voting as to whether or not we want a secret ballot?
We are proceeding directly to vote for the agreement with the draft resolutions under agenda items 16 and 17.
Just to reiterate what the President of the Assembly has said, the question before the Assembly is, do you agree with the draft resolutions under items 16 and 17 with the proviso that final reservations from Member States can be submitted? That is the question you are voting on. This is a message for the interpreters in the interpretation booths. We know that it is after midday. Our intention is, once we have finished the distribution of ballot papers to eligible delegations, then we will proceed to invite the delegations forward to submit their ballot papers. But once we have finished the distribution of ballot papers to the delegations, the interpreters can be released, because at that point I'm just calling the names of member states, so you will not need to be here for that. Thank you.
Spain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps it would be appropriate to clarify what constitutes a majority in this vote and what is the value of abstentions, just for everybody's information who's going to vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Legal Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rule 45 says, except as otherwise provided in the Convention, decisions shall be by a majority of the votes cast. This is Convention of Chicago, Article 48C. Then there is the next sentence, an abstention shall not be considered as a vote. Abstention shall not be considered as a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a small request based on what Mr. Larkas said and that there won't be interpretation. I would like to make a statement right away. Unfortunately, I've only prepared it in Russian. If you allow me, I would like to read it before we vote.
To the request of the Russian Federation, we will take the comments when we reconvene after the voting. We will have interpretation when we reconvene. That will likely to be at 2 o'clock. Peru?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just to put a point of procedure forward, we are in the process of voting, and I don't think it's appropriate to take the floor at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, delegates. I see that the monitors are nearing the end of the distribution, so we should not be much longer. Thank you. But once again, those of you that have already received your ballot papers, you may proceed to mark your vote and fold the ballot paper once in readiness for the submission into the ballot box. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to repeat the question to be clear, the question that you are voting on today is as follows. Do you agree with the draft resolutions under items 16 and 17 with the proviso that any formal reservations from member states can be submitted? That is the question. You have three options: yes, no, and abstain. Thank you. Delegates are also reminded at this point that should you make a mistake and you require a fresh ballot paper, please indicate to one of the election monitors who will supply you with a fresh ballot paper in exchange for the spoilt ballot. Three of the four teams have completed distribution, and I think the fourth one is about to conclude as well. So we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, election monitors. I understand that the election monitors have completed the distribution of ballot papers. Just to confirm, however, has every delegation with the right to vote received a ballot paper? Is there any delegation with the right to vote that has not received a ballot paper? Could you please indicate? Excellent, thank you. That being the case, I would now like to ask the election monitors to return any unused ballot papers to the podium along with any spoilt ballot papers. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, we're about to commence the roll call of member states to come forward to the podium and cast their votes. Before doing so, I would like to ask Mr. Ted Veloce of the Secretariat to confirm for the Assembly that the ballot box is indeed empty. Ted, would you do the honours, please? Thank you. Ted, you need to show the upper shoulder. Can I just check with the election monitors, are you all in your positions and ready? Thank you. That being the case, I invite the interpreters, if they wish to leave at this point, they may do so and return at 2 p.m. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now commence to the roll call of member states to come forward and cast your votes. As I have mentioned previously, only one delegate per member state should come forward to submit the ballot paper. Please remember that you must use the stairs on your left, I'm pointing, and await the instructions from the Secretariat officers as to when you should come up the stairs. Once your turn comes to move up the stairs, please remember that you must inform the two Secretariat officers, one of them at the top of the stairs, the name of your delegation, so that if the need arises, this can subsequently be verified that your delegation indeed participated in the vote. So just to clarify, this is the reason we ask delegations to confirm that their delegation is submitting a vote in case there are any subsequent questions of verification. Immediately after you have deposited your ballot paper into the ballot box, we ask you to return to your seat using the stairs on the other side of the podium. And return to your seats using those stairs instead for obvious reasons. I will now commence with the roll call of member states to come forward to the podium, and please remember, wait at the bottom of the stairs until you are progressed up the stairs. I will be calling the names of member states in batches. I commence with Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Andorra, Angola, Argentina, Armenia, Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bahrain, Bangladesh, and Barbados. If you could all please come forward and wait at the bottom of the stairs. Lelaine, forward. I now call Belarus, Belgium, Belize, Benin, Bhutan, Bolivia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, Brazil, Brunei Darussalam, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cape Verde, Cambodia, and Cameroon to please come forward. I now would like to call on the following member states to please come forward: Canada, Central African Republic, Chad, Chile, China, Colombia, Comoros, Congo, and the Cook Islands. Next, I should like to call on the following member states: Costa Rica, Cote d'Ivoire, Croatia, Cuba, Cyprus, Czechia, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Denmark, Djibouti, Dominican Republic, and Ecuador. I would now like to call on the following member states to please come forward: Egypt, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Estonia, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Fiji, Finland, and France. I should now like to call on the following member states to please come forward: Gabon, Gambia, Georgia, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Guatemala, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Guyana. Next, I should like to call on the following member states to please come forward: Honduras, Hungary, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Islamic Republic of Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Israel, and Italy. Next, I would like to call on the following member states to please come forward and submit their ballot papers: Jamaica, Japan, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Kiribati, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Lao People's Democratic Republic, Latvia, and Lebanon. If you could please come forward. And now I would like to call on the next group of member states to please come forward and deposit your votes. Lesotho, Liberia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Madagascar, Malaysia, Maldives, Mali, Malta, Mauritania, Mauritius, and Mexico. We would now like to call on the next group of member states to please come forward and submit their ballot papers. Monaco, Mongolia, Montenegro, Morocco, Mozambique, Myanmar, Namibia, Nepal, Netherlands, New Zealand, and Nicaragua. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We have one delegation which needs to change their vote, so we're just going to supply them with a fresh ballot paper. Thank you. So we will resume, ladies and gentlemen. Our apologies about that. I think we left with Nicaragua, so we continue with Niger, Nigeria, North Macedonia, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, and Peru. If you could all come forward, please. We should now like to call on the following member states to please come forward to submit their ballot papers. The Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Republic of Korea, Republic of Moldova, Romania, Russian Federation, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Samoa. We would now like to call on the following group of member states to please come forward and submit their ballot papers. We now call upon San Marino, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Serbia, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Singapore, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we continue with the next group of countries: Solomon Islands, Somalia, South Africa, Spain, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Sweden, and Switzerland. And for the next group of countries to please come forward as well, please, ladies and gentlemen, we have Thailand, Timor-Leste, Togo, Tonga, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, Turkey, Turkmenistan, and Tuvalu. We should now like to call on the next group of countries to please come forward: Uganda, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, United Republic of Tanzania, United States, Uruguay, and Uzbekistan. If you could please come forward, please. And the final group of countries, we have Vanuatu, Venezuela, Vietnam, Yemen, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. If you could also please come forward. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the roll call. To confirm, however, that all member states with the right to vote have in fact voted, we ask once again, is there any member state or delegation in the room with the right to vote that did not have the opportunity to do so? Could you please indicate? Thank you. That being the case, and as I mentioned earlier, I would now like to invite apologies. I would now like to invite the second Vice President, the delegate from South Africa, the fourth Vice President of the Assembly, the representative of the Republic of Korea, and the chairperson of the Credentials Committee, which is the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to please come forward. At this point, delegates, you are informed that the counting of the votes will be conducted by the Secretariat in the presence of the second Vice President, the fourth Vice President of the Assembly, and the Chairperson of the Credentials Committee. These three individuals will act on your behalf as scrutineers on behalf of the Assembly, and in order to ensure the confidentiality, transparency, and accuracy of the voting process and the tallying of the votes that the Secretariat will undertake. While the counting of the votes is underway, I understand that the Assembly will adjourn and resume at 2 o'clock for an announcement of the votes. Mr. President, I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narcos, and thank all delegates for their participation and getting through this efficiently. As was just announced, we will now adjourn and reconvene at 2 p.m. Thank you.